Good afternoon. My name is Clayton Graham. I am the chair of the Dr. Martin Luther King Indiana Holiday Commission. On behalf of the commission, I'm honored to welcome you to the 14th Annual Holocaust Observance. This year's program is titled Remembering the Holocaust, Lessons Learned, a fitting theme as we embark on the National Holocaust Week of Remembrance. I would also like to at this time welcome many members of the General Assembly, our Secretary of State, Connie Lawson, all other appointed and elected officials. I also, most importantly, want to welcome all the young people in the audience who participated in the Youth Summit beginning at 9:30 this morning. We hope that you have gained a better understanding of the importance of observing one of the most horrific periods of the world has ever seen. I want to thank our sponsors, the Indiana Civil Rights Commission, the Indianapolis Jewish Relations Council, and the Indianapolis Bureau of Jewish Education. We're thankful for your support. Without you, this program would not be possible today. At this time, I would like to bring to the stage Mr. Jamal Smith, Executive Director of the Indiana Civil Rights Commission, to offer greetings.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Great. Well, thank you, Clayton, and special thanks to the Dr. Martin Luther King Indiana Holiday Commission for your continued support. Again, my name is Jamal Smith, and on behalf of our Governor, Mitch Daniels, I'd like to welcome everyone to the 2012 Holocaust National Day of Remembrance. Our program this afternoon. As established by Congress, the Days of Remembrance are an annual commemoration honoring the victims and reaffirming the rights of all people to be treated equally with dignity and respect. Hence my role as Executive Director of the Indiana Civil Rights Commission, echoing the words in the proclamation signed by Governor Daniels, encouraging Hoosiers to remember the history and remain vigilant against hatred, persecution, and racism. So in our continued dedication to the principles of individual freedom and a just society, I'd like to personally thank each and every one of you for being here this afternoon, and especially to our teachers and administrators who have taken the time to include their young people in this very important program. So again, thank you, welcome, God bless you all, and enjoy the rest of the program. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mr. Miles Roger, Assistant Director of the Bureau of Jewish Education in Indianapolis, and he will introduce our keynote speaker this afternoon. So again, God bless you and enjoy the rest of the program.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for welcoming us this afternoon. On behalf of the Bureau of Jewish Education, it is an honor and a privilege to join with the Indiana Civil Rights Commission and the Indiana Holiday Commission in welcoming you to the 14th Annual Holocaust Observance. This year marks 67 years since liberation of the Nazi camps and the end of World War II. This year also marks the centennial of the Indianapolis Bureau of Jewish Education. Before, during, and after the era known as the Holocaust, the Indianapolis Bureau of Jewish Education has been devoted to education focused on diversity, understanding, and building relationships within the community. As part of our mission, the Bureau works with educators throughout Indiana to ensure quality Holocaust education in secondary schools. Each year, the Bureau's Holocaust education programs reach hundreds of educators and thousands of learners. While our focus is traditionally on education, today we come together not only to learn, but also to remember the 6 million Jews who perished under Nazi Germany. As the Bureau's Assistant Director, it's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker for today, Medine Shachar. Ms. Shachar comes to us from the Ghetto Fighters House Museum in Western Galilee, Israel, where she serves as Director of the English Speakers Desk and Museum Educator. She has worked in Holocaust education at the Ghetto Fighters House Museum and Yad L'Yeled Children's Museum since 2000. As museum educator, Mrs. Shachar is responsible for museum tours that take place in English and translating educational materials from Hebrew to English. As director of the English Speakers Desk, Mrs. Shachar develops partnerships with organizations throughout the world to further the museum's educational programs. Ms. Char earned her bachelor's degree in early childhood education and teaching certificate from Oranim Teachers College in Villanova. She's pursuing a master's degree in curriculum development. It is now my pleasure to welcome Madine Shachar.
Thank you, Miles. On April 19th, 1943, the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising started. Young Jewish men, women, and youth, among the last people in the ghetto after the Great Deportation in the summer of 1942, decided to take a last stand, to fight to the end and not be taken to the train station that would lead them to certain death in Treblinka. This is the event that marks the Holocaust Remembrance Day in Israel, and it is the date that is also observed in Jewish communities around the world, and even at the Indiana State House. While in Israel this date may seem an obvious choice, one would ask, why was this day chosen in Indianapolis? I believe that though the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising could be seen as a physical and armed act of Jewish resistance, it was more than anything an act of human resistance, human spiritual resistance. The leaders of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising were educators in youth movements before the war, and while in the ghetto continued to clandestinely teach Jewish youth. Like in other ghettos, this resistance started with underground newspapers and radios, a communications network between ghettos, and other acts of defiance, like documenting life in the ghetto. On April 19, 1949, just 6 years after the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, a group of survivors who immigrated to Israel, among them those who had participated in this uprising, founded the Ghetto Fighters House Museum, which was built at the entrance of their new home, the Ghetto Fighters Kibbutz, that was founded on the same day. The museum and the kibbutz act as one entity and serve as a reminder to all that remembrance is in the interest of the living. The kibbutz community faces to the future, while the museum faces to the past, commemorating the founding fathers' families and the whole Jewish nation. And at this place in Western Galilee, which overlooks the Mediterranean Sea, the first public ceremony in commemoration of the Holocaust took place at the foot of the museum. And in 2 days, on April 19th, thousands of people will once again gather for the 63rd time for the annual Holocaust Remembrance Day at the Ghetto Fighters House. One of the central goals of the Ghetto Fighters House Museum is to teach about the Holocaust to wide audiences in Israel and across the globe, to engage them engage with them in a multicultural dialogue on the meaning of the Holocaust and the significance of its lessons for our times. So for me, as a Holocaust educator from the Ghetto Fighters House Museum in Israel, standing here at the Indiana State House this morning is the fulfillment of a vision that Antik Zuckerman, Tzivia Lubetkin, Chafka Rabban, Benjamin Nolek, Miriam Novich, Sarah and Zvi Schneer shared 63 years ago on April 19th, 1949. When I think about teaching the Holocaust, and I ask myself, why should we teach our children about this most tragic historical event, I am reminded of this mission, but as well of the words of Yehuda Bauer, one of the most prestigious historians of the Holocaust, who wrote that the Holocaust happened because it could. Therefore, it could happen again. He goes on to claim that the Holocaust, which is not only a Jewish tragedy, but a general human tragedy, can be understood as a precedent or as a warning. As a Holocaust educator, I personally prefer that we teach about the Holocaust so it remains a warning, never to become a precedent. Since the Holocaust, there have been other genocides around the world, but none took place within democratic countries. What I do know and believe to be relevant on a global level is that Holocaust education can contribute to citizenship education. The purpose of citizenship education, especially in a multi-ethnic society, is to expose racism as an anti-democratic force, as well as to prepare students to reflect critically on aspects of their own culture. The 14th Annual Statewide Holocaust Observance and Youth Summit, which is organized by the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Indiana Holiday Commission, the Indiana Civil Rights Commission, the Bureau of Jewish Education, and the Indianapolis Jewish Community Relations Council, shows us that there is a place for Holocaust remembrance, but there must always be a place for education as an integral part of this remembrance. Today at the Youth Summit, with all you guys, we chose to explore the depths of racism through the reading of child testimonies of life just before the outbreak of World War II, but during a period where Jews were being denied their democratic rights. We also read the Declaration of Children's Rights to critically reflect on how schools do or do not protect these rights for all their students. the students this morning were asked to actively become advocates of children's rights in their schools and in their communities. The inspiration for this activity is Janusz Korczak. The story of this Polish Jewish writer, physician, and educator is that of a unique personality, both in his philosophy and worldview, that became even more evident during the first half of the 20th century, when both Europe and the Jewish community were undergoing considerable changes. Korczak epitomized the intellectual, the progressive educationalist, the pacifist, the humanist. All this was the very antithesis of the 1920s and 1930s, when totalitarian regimes were being established in Russia, Poland, and later in Germany. He was committed to social justice and believed that education had a vital role to play in this. He was the director of the orphanage named Our Orphanage for Jewish children and took part in the creation and management of an orphanage for Polish children as well. His lifelong commitment to the welfare of the orphans gained him an international reputation for what were then groundbreaking ideas, with an approach to education that emphasized a democratic way of life and the value of human life from childhood on, with care for the weak, for the small, and for the orphan. Along with this, Korczak educated the children to take responsibility. They were expected to take an active part in essential domestic tasks and in the children's parliament of the orphanage. They grew up in an environment in which they understood that their opinions should be heard and respected. This year, we commemorate the 100th anniversary of the opening of Korczak's Jewish orphanage in Warsaw, Poland. It is also the 70th anniversary of the Great Deportation of the Warsaw Ghetto in 1942, when on August 5th, Janusz Korczak, the orphanage staff, and 200 orphans were sent to their death at Treblinka. In the story of his life and death, Korczak's greatest legacy is perhaps the inspiration he provided for the promotion of children's rights worldwide, through not only his books, speeches, and writings, but also through personal example. So what are the lessons to be learned? First, that we must always put our children first, their welfare, their health, their happiness. This is what Korczak worked for all his adult life. Second, that we must have faith in our children to educate them to be active citizens that are aware of their ability to make this world a better place. And third, that we must remember and commemorate and teach about historical events such as the Holocaust so that our children will see them as warnings and not as precedents. And finally, I will conclude with the words of Janusz Korczak. Children are not the people of tomorrow, but are people today. They have a right to be taken seriously and to be treated with tenderness and respect. They should be allowed to grow into whatever they were meant to be. The unknown person inside each of them is our hope for the future. Thank you.
The words of this song are by the poetess, who is also a resistance fighter. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that softly
As I light the candles before you in memory of the 6 million, I also want to remember my grandmother Laura, my grandfather Philip, my aunt Bela, my uncle Meyer, and my 2-year-old cousin Alicia, who all perished in Auschwitz.
It is customary at a memorial service to say a prayer for the dead. Today we say a special prayer for those who died in the Holocaust. It is also a custom to stand in honor of those who have died. Those who are able, please join me.
שוכן במרומים, המציא מנוחה נכונה, בצל כנפי השכינה, במעלות קדושים וטהורים,
You may be seated.
Thank you, Cantor. That was very beautiful. My name is Todd Maurer, and I'm the president of the Jewish Community Relations Council. And I'm going to continue a theme I talked about last year, but first I have a couple questions for the students. And this is meant to be interactive for everybody in the audience. So first, and you can indicate by raising your hand if you agree with me or not. I've been watching you, so I see some of you yawning and some of you looking at the beautiful ceiling here, so I'm going to try to keep you interacted here. How many of you, just by raising your hand, were excited to skip school to come downtown today? Okay? All right. A lot of hands up. The hands that are not up, there's a couple halfway up. It's okay to put them all the way up. You're not going to get in trouble. How many of you learned more today than you thought you were going to learn? Good. A lot of good hands. How many of you, and adults included in this, how many of you knew what the Holocaust was about before today? Well, that's great. A lot of you. How many of you have ever been bullied, have bullied somebody, or know or seen someone who has been bullied? Just about every hand in the room. You don't have to raise your hands anymore. But I have for you. I want to know if you've bullied someone or you saw someone being bullied, did you do anything about it? Did you stop it? Did you fight back? Were you scared to get involved? So you learned about the Holocaust today and before today by your show of hands. The Nazis were very similar to bullies. They didn't like somebody, and they killed them. And there were people that just stood there and watched. Lots of people. Doctors, lawyers, politicians. Lots of people stood by and watched and did nothing. They didn't stand up for their friends. They didn't stand up for people they knew, people who just as guilty. So I was thinking about that today, and it reminded me of something that Rabbi Hillel said that I think is quite interesting. And this can be applied to lots of different things, but I think you can apply it to bullying and watching someone being bullied. And Rabbi Hillel said, if I am not for myself, then who will be for me? It means you need to stand up for yourself. And if I'm only for myself, then what am I? So if you don't look out for anyone else, you don't stand up to other bullies, then who are you really? And if not now, when? So don't stand by and watch others get treated poorly. The real heroes, the real tough guy, the real cool girls, what do? They stand up for others. And if you don't stand up for others, then you're just as bad as the bully. You're not cool, and bullies aren't cool. Even though they might seem cool now, they're not. So stand up against those bullies. Don't watch. Don't be like the people that watched throughout the Holocaust and watched people get killed. Make a difference. You've learned a lot today. You've learned a lot in school. Use it. Take it with you. Teach other people. Thank you for coming. Thank you to the Holiday Commission, to the Civil Rights Commission, to the Bureau of Jewish Education, to our speaker, to the cantor, to Phil, and all of you for being here today. Use this as an opportunity to learn and teach others. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd, for those words. That concludes our program for this afternoon. I, again, thank each and every one of you for coming out and taking part, especially for our young people. I know it's been a long day, but to echo Todd's words, I hope that you got a lot out of today's lesson and program. So, again, God bless you all. Enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you.